All right, welcome into SEC Live here on the Voice of College Football. Andrew Miller, Tucker Harlan, Jackson Johnson, and joining the program tonight to help us preview the first round of the college football playoff featuring the SEC teams, because we got 4 SEC teams playing in the first round, including an SEC on SEC matchup. Clint Lamb from Cover Crimson joins the show, does a great job breaking down Alabama. You can follow him at Clint R. Lamb over there on X, or Twitter, as most of us still call it. Also, sneakily, for the Mississippi State fans out there, Clint does have some good MSU content that he puts out. That's how I got to know Clint with the stuff he does putting out for the Bulldogs, but obviously does a fantastic job covering the Crimson Tide. Clint, thanks for taking the time to join in.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's I'm glad we're finally getting pretty close, only a couple of days away. I'm ready to watch some college football playoff games for sure.
Absolutely, and we don't have to wait long because we get a rematch on Friday night. Alabama and Oklahoma in Norman, 7 o'clock Central Time on ABC and ESPN. A game that, these two teams played not that long ago. And it was sort of a weird matchup because when you look back, Alabama outgains OU 406 to 212. They had nearly double the first downs. They were better on third down, better on a yards per play basis. But Alabama loses this game 23-21 in Tuscaloosa, in large part due to 3 turnovers. I think it was 17 points off turnovers for Oklahoma. You have a missed field goal in there that could have been the difference in the game. Obviously, you can look at any of those individual plays, and if Bama gets any one, you're probably talking about an Alabama win, and we're not even looking at OU in the playoff. Clint, when you look back on that game, though, beyond just the obvious, if they don't have those mistakes, they win. Is there anything you take away from it, maybe gives you a little bit more concern about the way Alabama played in that game, that beyond just poor turnover luck, or is it purely a situation of they got in their own way, and if they clean up the mistakes, they should be good?
I do think the turnover luck, and that's both sides of the football. Alabama has done such a good job of forcing turnovers, and in the 2 losses, or 2 of the 3 losses that they have had, they had 0. They forced 0 turnovers, and then the other one, Florida State, they only forced 1, and it wasn't on defense; it was on special teams. So it just seems like anytime Alabama's able to generate at least a couple of turnovers, they've typically won the football game. That was disappointing to see, but obviously, you can never predict turnovers. I know Alabama puts an emphasis on it. I know they're putting an emphasis on it this weekend, but I would definitely say that Oklahoma avoiding the turnovers and then Alabama being the one that, because going into that football game, like Alabama was such a heavy lean as far as the turnover battle. They ranked in the top 5 nationally. Oklahoma was down there around, somewhere in the 90 to 100 range as far as turnover margin at like -5, and yet they won the turnover battle 3-0. So anytime that happens, you're going to lose. The fact that the game was so close, despite that, I think that has a lot of people believing, Alabama still could have been the better football team or is the better football team. Going to Norman's going to be a lot more difficult, though. There was a lot of things, you think about the way Alabama's offense has struggled as of late, and then you put on, the fact that communicating is going to be that much more difficult, without that hostile road environment. I think that's going to make for an interesting football game, because that defense for Oklahoma, they're really good, on the first 2 levels, especially the back half of their defense, has some really good talent, some really good players, and they played extremely well against Alabama for the most part in that first matchup. But I also think they can that's a path to success for Alabama if they can give Ty Simpson the time that he needs. But I definitely think it's going to be a close game. Feels like it's going to be low scoring, defensive slugfest. But sometimes when we all predict it's either going to be really high scoring or really low scoring, it ends up being like the polar opposite. So I've seen that enough times in my life to know this is probably going to be like a 41-37 final score type of situation. But either way, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that would definitely be a pretty drastic change from the last time. But you're right. It does feel like it's always the opposite of whatever we expect. You talked about Oklahoma and the defense, especially the defensive front. And that's a group that's been fantastic all year. They're getting R. Mason Thomas back in this game, or at least it appears they are. And they did not have him when these teams faced earlier. OU got 4 sacks, a few more quarterback hurries on Ty Simpson the last time these teams played. I know pass protection at times has been an issue for Bama this year, and it's probably played a little bit of a role with Ty Simpson down the stretch not playing the same level that we saw early in the year. Is this something you feel can be corrected both from an offensive line and a quarterback standpoint? And how does that matchup play out against Oklahoma this second time?
I do think that when you actually look at the sack production that Oklahoma had, it was in a lot of those instances, it was bringing more pressure than Alabama could really account for. Very good job by Brent Venables and just the game plan. You give that guy a couple of weeks to prepare, and he's going to be a problem. That defense is going to be a problem. But you also got to look at the fact that, you know, the sacks in that game, a majority of them actually came on running backs. The offensive line actually did a decent enough job. Didn't do a great job, but relative to how they had performed in some of these other games, it actually managed things pretty well. R. Mason Thomas was not available. Taylor Wan, he ended up having the sack on Michael Carroll. That, I think, was the only sack that the offensive line gave up in that football game. Actually, maybe Parker Brailsford, after he suffered that injury, maybe he actually gave one up too. But he's been banged up. Cam Dewberry's been banged up and been unable to play or have been limited. Gino Vandermark went out in the last game. So they've been dealing with injuries, having a couple of weeks to kind of get things back on track, get guys healthy. I think that's really going to help. But R. Mason Thomas is not really an overly explosive or twitchy guy, but he's just so well balanced, so well rounded, and he is going to cause a problem in a variety of ways. When you throw that on top of what they have out there on the edge and what they have on the interior as far as that rotation and just the number of different guys that can give you production, it's a handful. And then the second level with Kip Lewis and some of those guys, I mean, one of the best front sevens in all of college football. There's no doubt about it. And yes, it is worrisome because you throw that combination in with the fact that, Jam Miller might not be 100%. He is trending towards playing. I do think that'll help Alabama. Hopefully Daniel Hill, I know he wasn't healthy in the SEC championship. I'm guessing he'll be a lot closer to 100%. Maybe that'll help. But from a pass protection standpoint, Jam has kind of struggled with that a little bit as of late, but going into the season, he was kind of far and away the best option Alabama had in pass protection. So him being limited, them getting R. Mason Thomas back, it's not going to be easy. But at the same time, I do think now that Alabama's going to have a couple of weeks to prepare because they didn't get to in the first matchup, it was just Oklahoma. I think that'll balance things out a little bit. And I think there will be a game plan to try to, protect Ty a little bit, give him some easy options, allow them to generate some sort of momentum or offense, let him get into a rhythm. I definitely think that they're going to, have some of that stuff ready to go.
You talk about the injuries a little bit, and I know Jackson had a question for one of the positions offensively because there is a position with a player who had a big game last time who may not be ready to go in this one.
Yeah, the tight ends. I know that it's listed as questionable for Josh Cuevas and Danny Lewis Jr. And, I'm wondering if we'll see Brody Dalton come in at any point in the game from the Alabama side of things. If we don't see either one of those guys, but how are you feeling about the tight end position if we don't see Cuevas or Lewis Jr. on Friday night on ABC?
Yeah, that's just another problem. I mean, they're getting R. Mason Thomas back, and out there on the edges, man, winning the C gap is pretty important. And Alabama's kind of struggled with that a little bit. Danny Lewis was supposed to be that big-bodied inline blocking tight end for Alabama this season to kind of complement what Cuevas does. He ends up, being hurt to start the season, been in and out of the lineup a little bit, but really just hasn't played a whole lot, and he's questionable going into this game. Cuevas, they are, hoping that he's going to be back, and I do think he's trending in that direction. Now, how close to 100% he'll be, I mean, I couldn't really tell you. I doubt that he will be 100%. But, this is the type of game where it's like if he can go, if he's able to, he's going to give it a go. So I would fully expect him to be out there. But, even him being limited, that could potentially be a problem for Alabama because Josh Cuevas has been such a safety blanket for Ty Simpson. And in those criticals, down there on the goal line when they have to have it, third down, doing some delayed stuff with him and just what he can do after the catch. He's a fantastic player. So that is, a concern. I think Caleb Edwards is going to be a phenomenal player in due time. 6'6", 264 pounds, massive body, good pass catcher, balanced option. But right now, I think he's still adjusting. Like, people need to remember this guy didn't enroll until the summer. He really didn't even get spring practice to kind of acclimate to playing major college football. Now he's playing in the SEC, and not only is he playing, but he's asked to handle a massive workload. I think that has been difficult, but I also think he's going to be better for it in due time. But, his inability to sustain blocks at times has caused some issues. what they've done behind him without Cuevas and Danny Lewis. You've seen some Jay Lindsey. You've seen another true freshman and Marshall Pritchett. Maybe you do see some Brody Dalton. He brings, that blocking element. But I think, with what Alabama just added out of the transfer portal and Josh Ford from Oklahoma State, that kind of made the statement that they're really putting an emphasis on getting that big-bodied Y inline blocking tight end. And that's something that I think they've been lacking a little bit this year. So, yeah, that's definitely another concern. And I know that it's felt like this entire time, probably like if you're an Alabama fan or if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're probably loving what I'm saying because it just probably sounds super negative when it relates to Alabama. I'm just letting you know what the problems that could be presented on Friday. At the same time, though, I still believe that they have, like Caleb Edwards is a good enough player where he'll make some timely plays. And I think they'll have some things dialed up. The wide receiver room is going to be critical to Alabama's success because I do think that they're susceptible in the secondary. And I do think that they're going to try to do some things to give, maybe it's getting Ty outside the pocket, giving him some time to extend. Whatever you need to do, they're going to have to do it.
Let's go to the other side of the ball. And when you look at the first matchup, OU did not do much of anything offensively. They didn't really have any skill players that had a standout performance. Sean Mateer, he had a rushing touchdown, but it was not a big day on the ground with him for his legs. Really, Bama kept OU bottled up outside of when the offense put them in bad positions. You come into this game the second time, we've seen Bama at times this year, rushing quarterbacks and be able to give them some trouble. But again, they handled Mateer fine the first time. But we know, in the Iron Bowl against Auburn, Ashton Daniels was able to run some in that game. So I don't know. Do you see that maybe being a concern in this one? And is there really anything OU can do offensively that you think that's how they need to go about putting together a better game plan to more effectively attack this Alabama defense?
Well, it's interesting because I do think there's in some ways, some comparisons to the two offenses in the sense that it really has felt like at times Oklahoma has understood the importance of what it would do for their offense if they could get their run game going. And so they've really tried to, and they, prior to the Alabama game, they did seem to have a little bit of success. I do know that both of their top two running backs, Blaylock and Robinson, both of those two guys, I think, have not been 100%, or at least have kind of been going through the grind of playing in the SEC and the physicality of it. I think them getting a couple of weeks to kind of, rest up should help them a little bit. They're probably going to try to run the football because if you can, it's going to open up a lot more. Mateer, to me, just mechanically, some of the decision-making, he's going to give you opportunities defensively. Like Alabama, the way that they're so opportunistic or have been so opportunistic, I mean, that was the most shocking part of that entire football game the first time around was the fact that Mateer is just one of those quarterbacks that gives you opportunities, and Alabama had him in that football game. Like there was one where Yanze Pierre's dropping into the flats. It's 100% an interception, assuming he catches it. If the ball actually gets to the flats, and it could have ended up being a pick six, but instead Tim Keenan ends up batting the ball down. Tim Keenan's just making a play. You can't blame him for that, but it's also like, man, what could have been on that front if they could have made that play? The opportunities were there. Alabama's just got to capitalize. But if they can run the football, Oklahoma can run the football a little bit more successfully than they did the first time around. I do think that will open up some other elements of their offense. Now, granted, I think they're going to try in the traditional sense, but I also wouldn't be surprised. I mean, you look at last year in 2024, Jackson Arnold, they just decided, and granted, it was a very extreme circumstance. Their wide receiver room was so depleted, but just the way they relied on his legs in last year's matchup and the success they had, at least in the first half, John Mateer, I wouldn't be shocked at all if they tried something similar just to add another element and get that +1 in the run game to kind of generate offense. Right now, it just feels like it's going to be a defensive slugfest. So both offenses need to be doing whatever they possibly can to try to drum up some sort of production where you can put points on the board, because I feel like every single point in this football game is going to matter, and it's just a matter of who can do that more successfully.
Definitely feels like it's going to be one of those types of games. A game that obviously, this is a very obvious statement because it's a playoff game. There's going to be a ton of added importance on it, but it feels like the pressure is always high in Tuscaloosa, especially now in the post-Nick Saban era. And Tucker, I know you're wondering a little bit, with Kalen DeBoer, there's been some narratives out there. So what did you have for Clint on that?
Yeah, Clint. So I know I've mostly sat here and posed like AJ Hawk on the McAfee show, but I was thinking, because I keep seeing these things pop up on social media, and it's one of the weirdest conundrums I've ever seen with a head coach, because I was watching something earlier this week. I think it was on 247, their CBS Sports HQ, where they had both AJ McCarron and Damian Harris on, and Damian Harris was just like, the standard is not being met. If he loses this game, he is firmly on the hot seat. Which, look, here's the thing. I'm a Tennessee guy. That's what we all saw at the beginning of the season after the Florida State game. Apparently, it's the case again with some of these former players. Yet at the same time, you've got him thrown around for one of the biggest coaching vacancies in college football. In fact, probably the only Power 4 vacancy at this point, with Michigan firing Sharon Moore last week. I even saw our guy over at Michigan, the voice of college football, John D'Adamo, who was just like, yeah, even though he's denying it, doesn't mean that he's not ours. So, Clint, which one is it? Is he really on the hot seat, or is he going to look for that job, or do you think he's locked into Tuscaloosa for the long haul?
I mean, you know, I would love to know who Damian Harris would want Alabama to go get. You know, if this is a post playoff, you come up short and then you decide to go in a different direction, who's the next option? You know, who are any options out there at this point? I'm sure they would go for somebody, and they could end up pulling somebody that no one was really expecting. I just think at this point, the fact that Penn State, there was a connection there, Penn State fans would have absolutely loved that hire. Michigan, I guarantee you, if something happened with Lincoln Riley and he would have taken another job, USC absolutely would have gone after him. I mean, there's some prominent programs who would love to have Kalen DeBoer, and that just kind of tells you how good of a coach he is. Now, I understand it hadn't looked exactly how maybe Alabama fans have wanted it to look, or others have maybe thought it was going to look. But when I also understand that it's been 2 years in a row where it's felt like there's been offensive regression throughout the season. And considering Kalen DeBoer is an offensive-minded coach, that's going to lead to some question marks. With that being said, you went 9-4 last year, 9-3 in the regular season. You didn't make the SEC championship. You didn't make the college football playoffs. This year, 10 wins, make the SEC championship, make the college football playoff. I mean, it steps in the right direction. Is it, the standard that Nick Saban had set for Alabama for their almost, a decade and a half, or closing in on 2 decades? No, but I don't even think Nick Saban was quite living up to that standard towards the end of his tenure. And that's something that I don't think people want to recognize. Everybody wants to remember all the success that he had, but it's just the landscape of college football. Everybody's going to struggle. Now, I'm not making excuses and saying the product that we've seen, when you're getting destroyed by Georgia in the SEC championship, it's 28-7. And I got to be honest with you, it could have easily have been 28-0. I mean, there was some calls in that game that were the correct calls, but Georgia kind of bailed them out, allowed them to, prolong the drive or extend the drive. And then they ended up putting up a touchdown. It was ugly. Couldn't do anything offensively. Every time they generated any sort of turnover or, mistake for Alabama, Alabama's defense was unable to hold the field goals or get stops. It was ugly. So I understand the frustration from fans from that extent. But with that being said, this is still one of the top coaches in college football. From everything that I've heard, he loves Tuscaloosa. It would be very strange for a guy in just a 2-year period to go from, I am so competitive, I want to take over for Nick Saban, I want to be the guy that follows in his footsteps. Because if he would have wanted a major college, coaching job, he could have sat right where he was at for another year. I understand he was losing Michael Penix and a lot of those players, but I guarantee you someone would have come calling and he wouldn't have had that pressure. He wanted that pressure. He wanted that challenge. And for him to just in 2 years later want to follow Sharon Moore at Michigan, that would be very strange to me. It would be a 180, pivot. Not saying that it's impossible. I'm not going to put it at 0%, but I'm just going to go ahead and say that I think if anything right now, I think he's angling for an extension and a race. And I think that the reason he's not coming out and saying a whole lot about it and just saying, I think the way he has gone about it is essentially given his agent a chance to work behind the scenes and try to get him that extension. Some fans don't agree with it. They feel like he needs to win a national championship before he gets it. Once again, that's not the landscape of college football. He is one of the best coaches. He's being highly sought after by others. If you want to keep him, you're going to have to, pay him. That's just part of it. And I'd ultimately think that before it's all said and done, that's exactly what happens. Now, if he loses, will there be some fans who are upset? Absolutely. Is Greg Byrne going to make any sort of emotional reaction to another loss? And I understand it's 2 back-to-back 4-loss seasons, but I don't see Kalen DeBoer going anywhere. I really don't.
I agree, because I don't see anybody throwing the baby out with the bathwater after the 2025 season. That's just something you don't do. You just do not do that. And especially with Michigan being such a mess. Like not just at the coaching department, but the athletic director department. Because like a year ago, Ward Manuel gets this contract extension, but then like the Connor Stallion situation, and then like this whole situation on Sharon Moore, and we don't know what's going to happen, but I don't see Ward Manuel being the athletic director by this time next year at Michigan. I mean, it's just complete down. It's downhill from there. And bonus for Bama, it's 2 losses for Larry Ellison. Number one, Warner Brothers doesn't want to be bought by Paramount. They want Netflix to buy them. And 2, they're not getting Kalen DeBoer. Take that, Michigan.
I definitely think
a little victory lap.
I definitely don't see it happen. I think Kalen DeBoer is going to be the head coach at Alabama next year. Clint, we won't make you give a prediction unless you want to give one, but any final thoughts on the game, and then tell people what they can expect from the Cover Crimson team in the coming weeks.
Yeah, a lot going on right now. A lot of video content, podcast content. We're doing something every single day. Typically, multiple times a day. We're going to be having. Tomorrow we got the keys to victory for Alabama coming out. I got a second mailbag coming out. And then on Friday, we'll be doing our post game after, which is always a lot of fun, win, loss, or draw. We like to have a good time on the post game and have some honest conversations when it's warranted. But as far as the score prediction, I do think something along the lines of like a 21-16 Alabama is kind of where I have it. And granted, like I said, I mean, I could totally see this going in the complete opposite direction and being way more high scoring than we all think. But Alabama's a 1-point favorite, or at least last time I checked. I think the over-under was 40.5 points. So I have the under hitting, and I have Alabama winning. I do think that Oklahoma, with that field goal kicker, anytime they're in field goal range, I understand it's supposed to be windy, and that could end up impacting things, but he's got a heck of a leg. And so I would fully expect him to hit some field goals. Wouldn't be shocked if Oklahoma scored a touchdown. But I think Alabama's going to have a game plan going in, and they're going to end up winning by putting touchdowns on the board when they get those opportunities.
Tate Sandell's booty shorts are scary, man. They're really scary.
Clint Lamb of Cover Crimson. You can follow him at Clint R. Lamb on X. And we also have the YouTube link for Cover Crimson down in the description of the video. Clint, thanks for taking the time.
There you go. Tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at Pubs about the magic that Clint Lamb, Jimmy Stein, and Emily Grace McWhorter are bringing on Cover Crimson. All right there. The link is in the description, but also in the chat. Like, comment, subscribe to that channel, and give Clint Lamb a follow because he is a freaking magician.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. This was fun.
You're welcome. Stay safe, stay warm. It's cold out.
Absolutely. You guys too. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
You too, Clint.
All right, we'll get into some more thoughts on that game here just in a sec, but in the meantime, let's hear from our friends at the Voice of College Football Bets.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select a betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
That's why you tune in to VOCFB Bets from Mark Rogers, Steve Dace of the Michigan Podcast, Matt Zemek from USC Primetime Live, USC at the Voice of College Football, Trojans Bar, and College Bar, Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and those very, very happy under the radar pick of the week from Steve Merrill. It's going to be fun.
That's right. Thanks again to Clint for taking the time. He does an outstanding job covering Alabama. Really one of the best Bama guys out there. And like I said, for my Mississippi State people, Clint, like last year, just started doing some Mississippi State work and covering the Bulldogs and did a really outstanding job. So definitely worth the follow, worth keeping up with the work that he does. Let's talk a little bit more about this game, because this is obviously far and away the biggest game we have of the weekend. And you're getting a rematch between two SEC programs, two storied programs. They played a fantastic game the last time. Kind of an ugly game, but still a down-to-the-wire battle. OU is a 1.5-point favorite at home, over under 39.5. Clint said take the under on that. And, of course, look, it's going to be I think we're all expecting a low-scoring game. All signs sort of point to that. Jackson, as our resident Alabama guy, what is your viewpoint going into this, based on what happened in the last game and how you think things may change this time around, if they do at all?
Well, what we need to do is make sure we don't throw a pit to one of the Bowen brothers and make sure Sean McDonough doesn't throw out his puberty voice over Bowen. But in all seriousness, no pit sits, and we need to be double teaming on Isaiah Satanga. If we can go down on Isaiah Satanga and go down on John Mateer, like the Bumpus Hounds chowing down on that Christmas turkey at the Parker house on A Christmas Story, then we're going to be just fine on Friday night on ABC. Put a ton of pressure on John Mateer. Put him in a 3rd and long situation. You're good. Put double team on Satanga, double team on Burks. You're good. That's what you have to do. And what Alabama also needs to do is just make good enough runs with Jam Miller and make sure that Ty Simpson is playing like first half Ty Simpson. First half of the season, of course. But like the second half season, but we'll wait and see what happens on Friday night. But that is what Alabama needs to do on Friday night in order for things to go well in Norman.
Tucker, how do you view this game?
This is going to be a very low-scoring game, 100%. I know we talked about that time, like with Clint, and then Jackson mentioned it as well. It just can't. There's no way in my mind that this game sees a team go over 30 points, just because I look at Bama, and I've said this all year about them. They're like that basketball team in college basketball that gets hot at one point in the season, and then they just kind of slowly self-destruct down the stretch. That's kind of what it feels like we're looking at with Alabama. Like they got to figure something out on the ground at some point. And I don't think Oklahoma is not the team to try and figure something out on the ground against, just to be completely honest, with the way that they play defense. Ty Simpson, he's relied a lot on his receivers this year, but Oklahoma has the athletes to match Alabama's wide receivers, guys like Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams. They're not going to be able to just tear up Oklahoma's secondary. They're very capable of defending on the back end. Like, even though Tennessee was able to produce against Oklahoma a little bit in the second half, because I think Aguilar finished that game with like 393 passing. They still did enough early on in the game to mess with Tennessee to where they kind of got a hold of Tennessee in the game and started to play the way that they wanted. And again, you never can tell with touchdowns from the defensive end. Like, they had one in the Oklahoma or the Bama game. They had one in the Tennessee game as well. So it's one of those things. It's the same thing that I guess South Carolina banks on with the special teams and occasionally the defense scoring touchdowns, because they had struggled on offense all season. And like, I don't envision Oklahoma's offense being able to do that much either, because they weren't able to in the last game, for one. And two, like, I saw the damn break in the Tennessee game in person. In the second half, like, Tennessee had done a good enough job against Oklahoma defensively in the first half, but then it just kind of fell apart in the second half. Alabama is not wired like that defensively. They are a much better defensive football team than Tennessee, and it showed in that game in Tuscaloosa. I don't see the winner of this game scoring more than 24 points. Honestly, this has like, at most, it will be like a 21-17 type game, because I remember last year out there, it was 24-3 with the 2 pick sixes in the game. So you might see some defensive scores in this game, just the way it continues to go. Fun fact about this game, by the way, not the first time they will have played in the college football playoff. Went well for Alabama the last time they did, though.
Yeah. Definitely went well in that matchup. Hit on a few things there. Oklahoma, for as good as they've been defensively, if you give your quarterback time, you can kind of exploit the secondary a little bit. And, I mean, you look on the season, OU from a pass defense standpoint, like Ole Miss had a big day through the air, 315 yards. Now, it wasn't a high yards per attempt, wasn't a high completion percentage, had a big day through the air. Joe Aguilar had a huge day throwing the football. Obviously, the turnovers, and that was a big issue. It's kind of same thing with Alabama, but still had a big day through the air. And then we saw in this game with Alabama, where Ty Simpson, when he had time in the pocket, was protected, could throw the football. But the problem was he wasn't always protected. And as Clint pointed out, some of that was not necessarily the offensive line, as it was really well-timed rushes from Venables with some of the blitz and pressure looks that they would send, and then also just poor pass protection from the running backs. But is that something that's going to get fixed this time around? I'm sure DeBoer's going to have a better answer in, but you talk about some of the concerns with tight end. If you're talking about trying to find ways to get guys involved to help protect the quarterback and takes, tight end is a part of that. And they may not be full strength at the tight end position in this game. It's weird because I on the one hand, I kind of feel like, you're right. Alabama's not going to be able to get the run game going. I think if you let Simpson be able to sit back and throw, he'll have success. But it feels like Venables one of the last DCs. I say DC. I know he's a head coach. He's one of the last defensive minds that I want to be able to go into a game with, or I want to be going up against if there is zero threat of us being able to run the football. Because I feel like if he knows that you're going to just be able to sit, like he trusts that his defensive front can limit your run game, because Alabama did not run the football well in this game last time. Bama's not run the football well pretty much the entire season. I don't think that's changing in this game, which means this game is going to be, can Ty Simpson sit in the pocket with R. Mason Thomas and that OU pass rush getting after him, and can he pick them apart? And the Ty Simpson we've seen as of late has not done a great job of that. Now, the other side of the ball, though, is the fact that OU's offense just looks so inept. It has looked worse than Alabama for much of the season, where they cannot get the run game going. And Mateer has the threat with his legs, but it feels like even that has not been super effective as of late with him. And just the passing, I don't trust him at all throwing the football. Now, I thought Clint made a good point with the run game. Obviously, OU is a team that they are better if they can get that going. And look, for what it's worth, Alabama is a team that has at times this season given up some yards on the ground. If you look at Bama's run defense, obviously the Florida State game was a big deal, but Georgia has run it on them pretty effectively twice. Now, the second time, Georgia was a low yards per attempt, but Georgia was able to grind out yards. Missouri ran the football well. Tennessee found some success on the ground. Auburn was able to find some success on the ground. Now, OU, when they played earlier, 28 carries for 74 yards, 2.6 a carry. Like previous matchup, OU was not able to get that going. Can OU get that figured out a little bit? If they can, then I think the Sooners might be able to get something happening offensively, especially with, Jackson talked about Satanga. He has really emerged down the stretch as being a big-time threat for the Sooners in that receiving core. If you can get the run game going and then have one guy to hit off of play action, I think OU would have a chance. Let's go through prediction time. Jackson, what do you got?
Before I get to my prediction, especially when looking back at Oklahoma, Missouri, LSU, right? Those last 2 weeks, a lot of people are wondering, okay, is this hangover moment for the Oklahoma Sooners? But then you see Satanga getting those game-changing performances against those opponents. Like, especially that first touchdown against Missouri. That was a total game changer the week before rivalry week, right? And then, getting that game-winning touchdown over LSU. It's huge right there. And, just like, and it's like Tucker said, it's basically like whoever gets 24 points wins. And I talked about it a lot on Alabama at the Voice of College Football and on SEC at the Voice of College Football as well. Just like, we all know that this is going to be a defensive battle. It's not going to be an offensive battle. It's basically, like, for me, it's going to be an Alabama 24-21 victory over the Oklahoma Sooners. And that's another L for Larry Ellerson. He may have all the money in the world, but he can't buy everything, especially Bugs Bunny and Kayla DeBoer from the Alabama Crimson Tide.
A part of me wants to jokingly say 9-6, make it another game of the century type thing.
Yeah.
And if there's a matchup to do it, it would be these two in the college football playoff, honestly. Because it's hard to beat a good team twice, but the problem with that adage in this game is you've got the game in Norman and not Tuscaloosa. If it was in Tuscaloosa, I would be taking Alabama easily. I don't know if I can do that. I think I'm going to go because Oklahoma has mastered, playing great defense in all of its games and then hitting like one or two explosives offensively in the win. They don't do much for most of the game, but they hit those one or two and then it's a problem. I'm going to say, let's get weird. Oklahoma 16, Alabama 13.
I kind of am there with you because, it feels dumb because if you look at the last game, Alabama was moving the football, and when they weren't turning it over, if they don't turn it over, they win that game and win it easily. I totally get that, but I'm starting to bind our co-host who in Josh Mahler, who hasn't been on in a bit. Josh has got stuff going on. He's still a part of the show. He'll be back hopefully next week. It's just been a tough schedule for him lately. He's gotten pretty annoyed on social media over the past month plus whenever people talk about turnover luck, because he feels people are diminishing what OU has done as a defense, and like the Tennessee game and the Alabama game specifically, where the turnovers have been talked about a lot, is if those turnovers don't happen, OU doesn't win the game. To which he would argue OU's defense is causing the turnovers because of the pass rush, because of the secondary being creating problems with the quarterbacks, confusing quarterbacks. And look, turnover luck is a real thing. But I also, at this point, I kind of agree with what Josh is talking about. And look, I also get the point that OU, for much of the season, it's not necessarily been a team that's forced a million turnovers. So this may just flip back to what we saw early in the year, and I look completely stupid here. But the way OU's defense has been playing recently is a defense that is setting itself up to force turnovers because they have the tackles for loss, because they get the pressure, because they do such a good job of confusing quarterbacks with where the pressure is coming from, what coverage they're in, and where to go with the football. And I think Simpson's just struggling right now. And I was big on Ty Simpson, and I still think that the tools are there, but I don't know. I have a hard time thinking he's going to go into Norman right now with the way he's played and it suddenly all be fixed. I'm not convinced the pass protection's going to all be fixed. And we've now seen, I know it was a very different quarterback a season ago, but Brent Venables' defense is 2 for 2 against Kalen DeBoer's offense. I think he makes it 3 for 3. I'm going to take Oklahoma in this game to cover that 1.5. I don't know if I got a score prediction. I hate putting out a score, but I definitely think it's a low-scoring game. This thing could go either way. I will not at all be shocked if Alabama goes out and just handles their business and doesn't turn the football over and they get the win. And if they do, okay, then we can start having another conversation. But on the road, I'm going to trust that defense to perform. So, yeah, I'll take Oklahoma to get the win there and, yeah, cover that 1.5-point spread. Unfortunately.
No, he hasn't, Godfather. I promise you. It's real. But he does look like he'd make a great Santa Claus.
So I have not put anything in my beard. I do have, for what it's worth, I have beard balm that if I put it in there, it does look like there's shoe polish in my beard. If I haven't put that on in like a year plus, but I do have some that, yes, it'll shine if that's in there.
Man, I'll tell you this, hey, dude. Godfather's got an awesome beard like you do as well. He's got the Santa beard.
Nice, I love it. Maybe I'll do that for an episode. I'll put the beard balm in and make it all shiny. I mean, I've got wax too. I can do the mustache up and all that fun stuff.
He's battling with Garrett Schrader.
Well, I will say that.
Shout out to Garrett Schrader. Incredible beard.
I mean, the beard magic is rubbing off on all of us here at SEC at the Voice College Football.
Garrett Schrader, on the one hand, like I do feel a little bit bad for him. Like I don't think he ever would have been like a special QB. Godfather, we know you were joking. We're having fun. Like
We love
we're
it.
all good. We're with you.
Oh man, like you'll love his harmonica, man. Like he does magic with that harmonica, man.
So Schrader was a guy. This was something we were talking about his freshman year. So that was the 2019 season, which was my senior year at State.
Wow.
Schrader was like a guy. He would wear camo and cut off jorts like into press conferences, and he had the hillbilly beard. And there were a lot of people that were like, "Man, this guy's about to become like no one will ever replace Dak in terms of being beloved, but this guy might be up there as one of the most beloved MSU quarterbacks of all time simply because he looks like an MSU fan. He looks like a stereotypical Mississippi State guy." And then, Joe Moorhead fired. We go to the air raid, and he just was never going to play. And they moved into a receiver that year to try to get him on the field, but so he transfers out. I'm happy he had a good career at Syracuse. It worked out for him there. So
solid.
Shout out to Garrett Schrader and that remarkable beard in the helicopter against K-State where he comes up 1 yard short. I was in the stadium for that.
That's my lasting memory of him.
That was not a fun game. Also, Garrett Schrader, as I'm continuing stories, got his eye socket punched in by Willie Gay.
I remember that.
Practices,
yeah.
Which is why he did not play the bowl game. And Tommy Stevens, who I will maintain, if Tommy Stevens had not gotten hurt at the beginning of that year, I think actually would have had a fine season. He showed some flashes, but he was just never healthy. But Tommy Stevens had to start the bowl game against Louisville in the Music City Bowl. We lose, and Joe Moorhead gets fired, which was not less about losing and more that, let's see, the year before, we're making this a Mississippi State podcast talking about Music City Bowl and Joe Moorhead when we're talking about the playoff, but I mean, why not rant? Let's see, Joe Moorhead's first year, that team was super undisciplined on the field. And then in bowl practices, or it's not bowl practices, like the lead up to the bowl game, I think they were trying to talk crap to Iowa at a children's hospital visit.
God.
And
that's
then we
so
lose that game. That's a rumor. That's not necessarily proven, but Iowa players put that out there, I think, after the game that State players were talking crap. And then the next year he had 8 players who got suspended because they for academic misconduct because they had a tutor taking tests. It got discovered because of a basketball player. Nick Weatherspoon, Quindary Weatherspoon's younger brother, was playing a game at the time that his test was submitted. He had the tutor taking the test for him, and it was revealed that there were like 8 football players involved as well. Including multiple important defensive players. And then the thing happens in the bowl game. That's why Joe Moorhead was not Mississippi State's coach past 2 seasons. Okay, well, let's talk about things that are interesting. Let's talk about the
I just remember hearing Beth Mowins calling the 2018 Mississippi State Kentucky game. I mean, I remember that. Because
I had we had people over for a watch party, and they experienced me have a complete and total meltdown. And throw a temper tantrum essentially in the apartment as that happened. That's how that went. That season was not fun. Those teams were not fun. Sorry. Okay. Let's talk about another playoff game. Another really interesting matchup involving the SEC. Number 10 Miami at number 7 Texas A&M. 11 a.m. Central Time, again, ABC, ESPN. The Aggies 3.5-point favorites at home. 48.5 is your total. I feel like this game has the potential to be an absolute banger. Where do you guys land on this matchup?
Oh, for me, that's a toss-up between Texas A&M and Miami. And, something I've always been saying throughout this season is when all the attention is on the Miami Hurricanes, they thrive under that. But when no attention is on Miami, they don't do so well in that. Case in point, Louisville, SMU. Well, not so much Miami, Louisville, because there was some attention on it, but it wasn't getting attention until second half from everyone. Miami, SMU, no attention. Guess what? Miami doesn't thrive on that. All attention on Miami. Oh yeah, they thrive. Case in point, Florida Gators, Notre Dame in week 1. To a certain point, rivalry week against Pittsburgh, where dreams are supposed to die in Pittsburgh, but somebody forgot to tell that to Miami, and they're like, nope, we're not intimidated by the road environment. And as for the A&M Aggies, they're looking to just wash away the kryptonite of Texas. And Casey Conception has been a huge baller this season. And like he made some huge plays in that comeback against South Carolina. I mean, I know it's not impressive making a huge comeback against a team with a losing record, but I mean, it is the largest comeback in SEC history. Like 30-3, 31-30. Like, good grief.
Yeah. Yeah, they have been able to weather some storms this season, as you mentioned with that one. They're going to have to weather hurricanes this time around, and I'll tell you what, like Miami's tricky because the turnover chain has been out this year. We talked a little bit about Oklahoma with turnovers. They have, I think, 20 turnovers for the season forced, that's one of the best in the country. And like, is that going to be a problem for Marcel Reed? They got a very good edge rusher in Ruben Bain that they're going to have to try and keep out of the backfield. I know my Tennessee Titans are looking at him as a potential get in the NFL draft, and that's a guy that you don't want breathing down your neck. So their defense is gonna challenge Texas A&M a lot, I feel like, and communication is going to be easier for them since they're playing on the road. Also, I checked the forecast for this game. I think it's supposed to be like upper 70s out there in College Station, which main reason I checked is because I know Miami did not leave the state of Florida until November for a game, which is kind of remarkable and kind of a strange luxury to have that deep into the season. And funnily enough, they lost their first game out of the state of Florida, was in Texas against SMU. The other thing I have to wonder about is if Texas A&M's defense, which again, they have potent edge rushers just like Miami, can they force that 4 interception game from Carson Beck that we saw against Louisville? Because he had those last year in SEC play. We've only seen it once this year, really, at Miami. But you're talking about a road environment and Kyle Field that is going to be pretty charged up. That's the biggest sporting event they've had out there. I don't know how long it's been since they've had a game this important at Texas A&M. So, yeah, this one's a real toss-up, and I think it has the potential to be the most entertaining game of these, especially if you're not just a fan of defense like we talked about in the first matchup.
I think this game could certainly be a whole lot of fun. And the thing that stands out to me is, and I talked about this when we did our initial reaction to the playoff reveal, I kind of feel like Miami is one of the few teams that might be able to match up with Texas A&M in the trenches, because what A&M has going for it and why they've been so good is that's a fantastic offensive line that's really paved the way for a strong run game and obviously gives them plenty of time in the passing game. And then on the other side of the line of scrimmage, they're not necessarily a dominant run defense. They've been pretty solid in that, but they've been really good about getting after quarterbacks. So they have a pass rush that they can lean on. And that's kind of you got a good pass rush and you got a good offensive line, you're probably going to have a lot of success. Because, look, that Texas A&M defense is kind of exploitable beyond that. But they've done a pretty good job with those things. And you look at Miami. Miami's another team that's got a strong offensive line. They've run the ball for, it's not like a crazy rushing attack, but they're really solid running the football, 150 yards a game, over 4 yards a carry. From a sack standpoint, they've only given up 11 sacks total on the season. They've done a good job of protecting Carson Beck. Now, obviously, they've not faced a lot of teams that have the defensive fronts that Texas A&M does, but like Miami's also strong in the trenches. Like, again, strong offensive line, Ruben Bain in that defensive line. And I kind of look at A&M and I wonder, is Miami a team that can neutralize what A&M does well? Because not many teams have done a good job limiting A&M's run game, but like South Carolina limited A&M's run game early on, and it put pressure on Marcel Reed. And at first, Marcel Reed did not handle it well. Now, in the second half, he handled it masterfully, like threw for 300 second half yards and was able to lead that crazy comeback, which is Jacksonville's time. You get a ton of credit for that. Like, that's fine. But when they didn't have the run, we also know South Carolina's not a great team. Like, there's that part of it. And then Texas, like A&M ran the ball okay against Texas, but they were not able to lean on their run game, and it put more on Marcel Reed's shoulders, and he didn't have a great game through the air. very low yards per attempt. I think his completion percentage is fine, but they couldn't get stuff going. And again, that's a passing game with Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver. Like, they've got explosive playmakers in that receiving core. A&M kind of is a team that needs to get its ground game going to then open up everything else that they do. And I wonder if Miami defensively is a group that can limit that, because again, it's not just Miami, having a good pass rush, and they do on the season. Miami is 34 sacks, so they're averaging 2.8 a game. But again, yeah, I mean, look, Akeem Messidor, Ruben Bain, like, it's a fantastic group. They also have been good against the run, and look, they have not faced a lot of great rushing attacks, but Notre Dame ran for 93 yards on 28 carries. SMU had 23 rushing yards. And SMU is a team that typically is able to run the football pretty effectively out of their offense and does some things similarly to what A&M wants to do offensively. A little bit different, but still. I think Miami matches up pretty well. And I also think on the other side of the ball, everybody loves to dunk on Carson Beck, and I get it. Like, he brings some of it on himself. That's probably not fair to say to him. It's just he's been a quarterback that's been fun to cheer against, frankly, for a lot of college football fans. Carson Beck's a fine quarterback. He's really not. He has a couple awful games, and that kind of skews everyone's perception of him. But when he's protecting in the pocket, he's been fine. And, I look at the group of receivers that he has this year. Malachi Toney and Keelan Marion. And if you can get CJ Daniels to step out, Elijah Lofton at tight end, he's got a good group of pass catchers. A&M secondary has been exploitable. Like, teams have been able to throw the football in Texas A&M this year. And I kind of think that there's a chance we look at this game and Miami's able to slow the A&M run game, put pressure on Marcel Reed, and he doesn't necessarily handle it well. And on the other side of the ball, Miami's able to protect Carson Beck, and they're able to do enough in their offense. We'll go through each of our predictions here in a sec, but I guess I'll go ahead and make mine. Like, I kind of lean Miami here. I think Miami can go into College Station and pull an upset. I would definitely pick them against that plus 3.5 in this game.
For me, y'all seen the video that I did here on AC at the Voice of College Football with Alex Dono, Locked On Canes, Locked On AC, and weeks past, where I said Miami's going to win 27-24, and I don't say it very happily, but that's what it's going to lean. Because, again, the spotlight on Miami tends to work out for them. And it's going to work out for them again on the road at the 12th man. It's going to be a 27-24 fashion for the Miami Hurricanes.
I was just thinking 27-24, so I'm going to have to change it up now.
Well, I mean, great minds think alike, man. So it's like, no worries.
I feel like one of us has to pick Texas A&M since we are an SEC show, so I might as well do it.
We're doing a bad job of being SEC homers because we pick. OU. I get it; they're an SEC team, but it's OU. So we're picking against Alabama, or at least two of the three of us are. We're picking Miami. Well, what are we doing? We're supposed to be SEC homers, right?
Yeah. No. I'll believe in Texas A&M for this game. I don't think it's going to be a super high scoring game. It's definitely going to be higher scoring than what we're going to see in Norman on Friday night. I'll go. Let's see. I think I will go Texas A&M 31, Miami 27.
There we go.
It's certainly reasonable. I mean, I won't be shocked at all if A&M finds a way to get it done in this game. Look, I mean, there is a chance playing at home. They just Carson Beck gets in that environment and he's bad Carson Beck and crumbles.
Bad Carson.
And was 3 interceptions. And that's enough for A&M. And, the A&M offense, maybe they're just physically more overwhelming than anything Miami's actually seen this year. It's totally a possibility, but I don't know. I think the Canes match up pretty well. So I think it's going to be a back and forth game. I think these first two SEC games we've talked about in the playoffs should be a whole lot of fun. The last one, probably not as much fun because just the odds of this.
I think Eeyore is happier than that last one, and Eeyore has a nail on his butt.
The odds of this being super competitive are fairly low, especially because we've seen these teams play already. That's Ole Miss and Tulane. Early in the season, the Rebels won at home 45-10, and it was not that close. 548 yards for Ole Miss compared to 282 for Tulane. Trinidad Chambliss threw for 307, ran for 112. Just a dominant performance for the Rebels the first time these teams faced. Line is only 17.5 in favor of the Rebels, over under a 56.5. This is 2:30 p.m. Central Time on TNT, HBO Max, and True TV at Vaught Hemingway. The first game post Lane Kiffin. Let's start there because we got to find things to talk about with this game. Game one out without Lane Kiffin. First, is there a negative impact, or is this a rallying point around Pete Golding?
More like a rally around Pete Golding, because it was so funny though, because I scrolled through Instagram when Lane Kiffin was saying that, oh well, the players want me to stay through the playoffs. They want me to stay. It's like when the parent that the kids can't stand is saying that, oh well, the kids want me here. They're like, no, we don't want you.
I want to say something. There was a story that got put out, and I cannot believe I'm doing this. I guess I'm kind of sticking up for the Ole Miss side here. A story went out the other day explaining like the final days of Kiffin in Oxford. And in that story, it says that the player leadership council voted 6-3 in favor of Kiffin coaching through the playoffs. Either if the players, either they're lying or somebody gave crap info to that reporter who I didn't see who wrote the story, because everyone around Oxford will tell you that, and the players have said, we did not want him coaching us after how that went down. So, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing though, is like Lane Kiffin is the only man that can get Mississippi State fans to pull for Ole Miss.
Oh, no. Go Wave. Roll Wave. Are you kidding me? Like, I can point out.
Only against LSU at the very least.
I can point out Kiffin being a complete and total clown because he is a joke of a person. But I will happily point out all the stuff Ole Miss fans are doing. Like, we're so happy that we're not having to deal with this crap anymore. They all ate it up when he was the coach. Everything that they complain about now, the stupid tweets, the sip, all that stuff, they were all celebrating that when he was theirs, and they were convinced he was staying forever. So I don't want to hear their whole thing about how happy they are for him to be done.
Oh, you're not going to like the Ole Miss Tulane preview from Caleb Sailors and myself then, because
sure, they'll say whatever. Like that, it's
we went on a venting session.
Well, the whole release the Lanestein files. Like, yeah, you guys shut up about all this stuff when he was your coach. You had no problem with any of it as long as he was winning football games for your program. But the second he leaves, all right, let's spill all the Lane's dirty laundry and let's talk about what he's been doing around town for the past 6 years. Like, okay, like, no, I will not. Ole Miss is going to win this game. Newsflash, they're going to win easily. And I think Pete Golding will probably be successful. I don't think he's going to win the way Lane won, but I'm sure he'll do fine. I ain't pulling for them, though. Let's not make any sort of mistake there. I will defend, though, that if this idea that Ole Miss players wanted him to coach, they did not.
No. Oh, man.
Yeah, I don't get that sense at all just looking at social media, But it is funny, Andrew. You mentioned that. It reminds me of another school with a big M in its logo when it comes to coaches making stupid decisions off the field and shutting up about it as long as he's winning football games. And those are our friends to the north. Not really our friends, but TJ and John are our friends. We don't claim the rest of the Michigan men.
Rival fans had this story and were publicly talking about that story for like a year. So you can't tell anyone Michigan did not know.
Oh, man.
Oh, they do.
It's very, very coincidental they fire him after signing day. And I understand, like, well, players can be released of their letter of intent. You still got to have a place to go.
Oh, man. Well,
you still have to have a place to go. And also, if they're in the playoff, is this a thing right now? Is Sharon more fired if they're in the playoff right now?
No.
Ward
is not conducting the probe into the program, but we mentioned it before the show began. This is a classic SEC matchup between these two, with Tulane going at it with Ole Miss. Initial prediction, I think this game is probably closer than the first time around, but not by much. Like, I still think Ole Miss can get it rolling. I guess it just depends on who's calling the shots for them in this game offensively. Like, you lose both Lane Kiffin and Charlie Wise Jr. I know we've kind of discussed at length how Charlie Wise Jr. is essentially a Lane Kiffin merchant at this point in his career, just living off of that offense, and he's the one responsible for Weiss's Broyles Award, not Lane or not Charlie himself. So I guess it's just about how Trinidad and the offensive coordinator gel in this game. But overall, I don't see this one being that close. I think Ole Miss is going to come out very motivated for this game. And also, it's a huge game for the program as a whole because, if you're just looking at wins and losses, you could argue this is their best season ever, just with the amount of wins that they've got at this point. And they're hosting a postseason game, which has not been done at Ole Miss ever, I don't believe.
Well, it's not been done anywhere up until last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There you go.
Jackson, any other thoughts on the matchup? I have a few things, but I'll let you go.
Ole Miss is going to smack Tulane off the face of the earth, but not as bad like they did on September 20th. That is what I can tell you for sure. It's going to be a wild ride that Tulane's trying to get through. Ole Miss wins 45-20.
Yeah, so if you're trying to create any sort of a path for Tulane here, like Tulane does run the football well. And let me get it up because I didn't have the stats in front of me. I was looking at it earlier. 170 rushing yards a game. And in this game earlier in the season, they ran for 178 at about 4.6 a carry on Ole Miss. Ole Miss's rushing defense, by the way, not been great. Like teams with competent run games have been able to run the football on Ole Miss. So if you're Tulane, is it possible that, Jake Retzlaff with his legs, he's 16 rushing touchdowns at this point of the season, 610 yards over 5 a carry. Javin Gordon, Jamari McClure, Arnold Barnes, are they able to get a run game going that they can lean on? And can you kill clock? Can you take as much time off the clock as absolutely possible? Don't let Ole Miss and that offense get on the field. Like, that's kind of your hope. Like, you sit on the ball and limit possessions and keep this thing as tight as you possibly can. Now, the problem is I think the way Tulane plays defensively doesn't necessarily complement that because Tulane's pretty attacking on defense. They're big about forcing turnovers. They're big about forcing negative sacks, negative plays, all that kind of stuff. To be fair, those types of plays can be very beneficial when it comes to trying to win a game like this. And honestly, maybe you make a case of playing that style defensively. Hopefully, I'm talking myself out of the point I was making. What I was going to say is if you play bend, don't break. Like Ole Miss in the pass game, like if you let them hit explosive plays down the field, Tulane, it's going to be lights out. Like you're not going to have a chance to keep up in this game. But if you could maybe play some red zone roulette and force Ole Miss to have to work their way down the field, don't give up big plays and say, hey, we're going to get down in the red zone and we're going to try to make stops here where the field tides up. Because Ole Miss's red zone offense has not been great this season. That's like, again, one of the things hurting that offense is once they get down inside the 20, they're normally not as effective. They haven't been as effective this season. That could play in hand with a slow ball control type of attack for Tulane. Now, that said, Tulane, again, wants to play aggressive. The worry is if you play that way, you give the big plays down the field, and like I said, it's lights out. The positive is if you play that high-risk style of defense, maybe you force a couple turnovers, give yourself some extra possessions, and that's enough. So I'm kind of talking myself into the stick with the aggressive nature, like play ball control and then be aggressive on defense, see what's going to happen. I think it'll be closer. I mean, ultimately, though, I think Ole Miss, like, they will be able to do more than enough. I don't think Tulane can just lean on the run game the entire way through for enough to win. I don't think their defense is going to stop the Ole Miss offense. So Ole Miss wins this game comfortably. In fact, I would go as far as to say I think they still cover that 17.5-point spread. I just don't think it's going to be a 35-point victory like it was last week.
Yeah, that's where I am too. I think I was thinking like 42-21, something along the lines of that for a final score.
Could certainly see something within that range. Any other final thoughts from you guys with either the SEC games or there's only one other playoff game this weekend.
Probably a good thing we're not talking about it because it'll be the least entertaining one.
Well, the Bears-Packers are on at the same time as James Madison, Oregon. That's the funny part right
We don't want to talk about a game that is a safety issue, Tucker.
Safety issue?
Oh, you're not aware of the Bud Elliott tweet?
Oh,
No, I'm not. I didn't see it.
When the bracket got announced, and by the way, like I'm not here to trash Bud Elliott. Bud does a fantastic job with Cover 3. I enjoy his work. But Bud was pretty like he does not care about this game and does not want this game, which I get it. And he kind of started like both on the Cover 3 pod and also just on social media, just sort of going on about it. And he says it's a joke tweet, and I actually do believe him because it was one of those things like it was people blowing up his mention, so he just continued to go into it. And he said playing these games G5 versus these big time power programs is a safety issue.
Oh, okay.
So he's now getting like it went on like Awful Announcing, like did an article on it or something over that tweet. So he's getting clowned for that, but he's played into it. So all the G5 fan bases are going after him for saying that.
Just so it's like one of those things where you're looking at a like a high school football game where it's like if you score 35 or you're up 35 or more in the fourth quarter, they'll just run the clock the entire second half. That's essentially what you're looking at.
Yeah.
But hey, shout out James Madison because they brought Sunbelt Billy back to his home in the Sunbelt.
Bye, Billy Napier.
Okay. I don't think Billy Napier is just some terrible football coach. I think, look, the fact that he had success at ULL, which I get that's a program that has had multiple coaches, and yes, I'm still calling them ULL. I don't respect them to call them by what they want to be called. I don't care. They're Louisiana Lafayette, and it's just what they are.
Same.
That's a program that has had some success over the years, but they had never won the way Billy won there. That counts for something. I don't think he's just a terrible football coach. And look, to be fair, his thing is getting players, and James Madison is a program set up to get players. I'm sure he'll get guys there. It feels like a very uninspired hire, though, if I'm JMU, where when they hired Signetti, they were hiring a guy who had just every stop of his career, he won football games. Multiple programs, won games. Hired Bob Chesney. Again, everywhere the guy goes, the guy wins football games. Like the whole idea of winners win. We don't really care where you've been, what your ties are. If you win football games everywhere you go, you're probably a dang good football coach. We're going to trust you to come in.
They should have got Brent Vegan
instead of going for the retread.
Yeah, they should have gotten Brent Vegan from Montana State. Honestly,
that would have been. I will say, like even with winners win, that would be a little interesting from a ties standpoint. But like dip into the FCS ranks again. And Toledo just did this with the hire. They got the coach from Mercer. And I don't know if you've looked up his head coaching record. The guy wins football games. So, like, that's a move I think would have been – and I would rather have James Madison than than Toledo if I was a head coach. Like, I don't know. We're talking about James Madison.
It is SEC related with Billy Napier, though.
It is.
Yeah. There it is. Oh, man. Well, I guess before we go, what magic are you guys cooking up, gents?
Oh, I guess I can answer first. I'm cooking up all kinds, Jackson.
Oh, you're making bate chocolate on Vols Wire and Tennessee Voice College Football and Sports Illustrated. You do it all, man.
Yeah, I wish I was doing more at Vols Wire right now. The recruiting stuff is kind of dipping a little bit. But we did have a very interesting story yesterday with Legend Bay. That whole thing is weird, man. Going from I'm committed to Tennessee to flipping to Ohio State to Mom signed my paperwork, so I have to go to Tennessee. Then he requests release from his national letter of intent. So now he's at Ohio State again. That whole thing is so weird. One of the oddest.
That to me, because it's like, I mean, I know I clown on like the other team, the teams that are Bama's rivals, but in all seriousness though, where it's like, if your heart's at Tennessee, or if your heart's at Bama or Ohio State or anywhere in the world of college football or anywhere on this earth, you go where your heart is.
Yeah,
go where your heart is, and it's just like. That was just a mess. Like, good. I felt so bad for the kid, and I felt bad for Tennessee, and I know clown on him a little bit, but I legitimately felt bad for him, and with that whole Nico stuff that happened, I felt bad for him that all that was going on.
See, well, not to get too far into the weeds here, but I don't look at that as the Nico situation as much because I think Nico's dad was the one super involved there.
Oh yeah,
I think that what it's more comparable to is Boo Carter, just because he was a guy that was at Tennessee, but his heart wasn't at Tennessee. And after having seen that, and even though I think Legend Bay is a terrific athletic talent, I just don't think his heart was in it at Tennessee. So he's going to Ohio State, which again, good for him. But go where you want to go to college, man. I'm just I'll say that much. But we're still doing what we can with recruiting, working with what we got right now. I'm sure we'll have some updates on spring visits here in the coming months. As far as Sports Illustrated, we're putting out everything on College Football HQ on SI right now. I've covered this whole Sharon Moore thing pretty extensively. Mainly the names that are being thrown around out there. Like it kind of feels like Kenny Dillingham is the name that keeps getting linked out there. I learned something today. He and Taylor Lewan were at the same high school in Arizona at one point in time, and Taylor Lewan was the one linking him to the job in one of the clips I saw. So interesting stuff. But we do all kinds of stuff. I read something about Mestamaker entering the transfer portal. That's a pretty large group of 5 transfer. Probably going to end up at Oklahoma State if I had to guess, but you never know. An SEC school could come calling. And then, of course, we got the Tennessee channel here on the Voice of College Football Network. We did a show this past week talking a little bit about Jim Knowles getting hired at Tennessee. Had an in-depth breakdown of the Tennessee football schedule in 2026. Looking forward to that. And then just talking about some of the opt-outs in the bowl games because Chris Brazel and Arion Carter are the 2 notables who have opted out for Tennessee. Jermon McCoy is technically opted out, but he hasn't played a snap this season, so I don't count that. We did all that there. Hoping to have a preview next week on the Illinois game, and then we'll have a post-game show after the Music City Bowl. I guess that'll be on December 30th, that Tuesday. So, yeah, that's what we got going on with myself and Jordan Binkley over there at Tennessee, the Voice of College Football.
There you go. Tell your friends, family, and cashiers at pubs about the match that Tucker Harlan is bringing all right there in Tennessee at the Voice of College Football, Balls Wire, and Sports Illustrated. Andrew, you're up next. Good buddy.
Not as much. Look, you can check us out.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, you're a magician for Mississippi State Athletic.
You can keep up at Mississippi State, the Voice of College Football. We're going to be talking, obviously, more about the bowl game in the coming weeks. Hope to get a Wake Forest guest on to take a look at the Demon Deacons, which I do know they have a couple big contributors of their offense who will not be playing in that game. So we're going to be diving into that matchup more. Right now, talking a lot about Mississippi State in a coaching search for assistants. They whiffed on their lead target for receivers coach. He's taken the job at Ole Miss. So we had a video talking about that up on the channel. Also an article on that from maroonandwhitenation.com. So you can check out my written work over there. But yeah, going to be talking more about the transfer portal. We have a video up on the state's biggest needs for the portal right now on I say it's up on the channel. It is submitted. I don't know if it's actually been published yet, but there's a video submitted to go up either now or very soon, talking about the biggest needs for state in the portal this offseason. Hint, it's the trenches. So those are going to be the things we talk about, obviously previewing the bowl game and then looking at Mississippi State, these offseason moves. It's going to be a big year 3 for Jeff Lebby, what he has to do to get things fully turned around. So talking about the portal, talking about the coaching staff. I did want to say for this channel, we have not set our schedule for next week. Obviously, the holiday season coming up, so we don't fully know what day those of us are going to be on here, what conglomeration of us we will have on the show next week. Obviously, Josh wants to be able to get back in the fold. We want to have Josh on the show as well. He's been really busy over the past few weeks, which is why you haven't seen him here. But we have not set when we're going to go live next week. Also, not yet talked about what we're going to do in terms of reactions to the weekend, if we're going to have anything like that. But we'll be sure to let you guys all know whenever we get a stream planned for post game. I can't talk. I don't know. I'm running on fumes here at the end of the show. I had to drive over to Louisiana today, and back. I had Boudin though. That was fantastic. So it worked out well. Jackson, how about you? What magic are you cooking up?
Well, I did a video for the fall preview of Alabama, Oklahoma here on SEC at the Voice of College Football with Parker Thune. And I did a final preview of Alabama, Oklahoma on Alabama with the Voice of College Football with John Williams of Locked On Sooners and Sooners Wire. And tomorrow night, Jeffrey and I are taking your calls on the Crimson Tide at 9 p.m. Central on Alabama with the Voice of College Football. And then there's that Alabama, Oklahoma post-game show after the conclusion of the ball game Friday night on Alabama with the Voice of College Football. And I've got some magic coming up on Jacksonian episodes at Jackson Johnson 979. And, you know, for more updates, what I've got going on, the Jacksonian, Alabama with the Voice of College Football, SEC at the Voice of College Football, check me out on Jackson VOC, on @/Twitter, and on the Instagram threads, Jackson Johnson 543908. And I promise you, I'm changing that Instagram handle, I swear.
All right. Well, appreciate everyone who tuned in and was interacting with us. I didn't even mention Godfather saying Tulane's going to win because Pete Golden will get tuna cans started him. I love that. Thursday night will rock. Yeah, yes, it will.
Yeah, it will.
For sure. Check out the work there, Alabama Voice of College Football. But yeah, appreciate everybody for being a part of the stream. If you haven't already, please leave us a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on so you do know whenever we do go live. And again, follow us all on our social handles and go check out our work on the other Voice of College Football channels. That'll do it for us tonight.
Good night, everybody.